And then I think we organized it in such a way that it made sense. I hope that it made sense. And then there was a question over here.
Nzinga.
Is that directed at me?
To anyone that may want to ask, how do you connect younger readers to what would be what might that be?
Well, when I first started, I've never been to a university. I have taught mostly community workshops. And so when I first started teaching in DC, my idea was, when I'm teaching poetry, is to find a bridge. So like my first workshop was called From Rapping to Writing. Then I would have the students bring in their favorite rap songs, and then we would look at them. And then I'd say, well, this is a metaphor, this is a such. Then I try to find a way to connect that to a poem. So with Yusuf's work, because his references are so broad, and there's so many worlds in it, I would ask the students about things that they might be interested in. And then I would try to find something in one of the poems that could be a bridge. And then from there, once you get them into a poem and they get to unfold it and they find the world inside of it, generally something opens up, and then that allows them to, you can move to another poem. But I just always look for some type of bridge. It can be oftentimes content.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I have this exercise that I do with my students. I bring in brag poems. So Song of Myself, Ode to My Hips,
right.
LL Cool J's, what's that song? I'm Bad? Yes, I'm Bad. And, other poems like that. And you just try to, we're all talking about the same thing always, right? So there's always gonna be connection. And I think that it's going to be easy to find those connections once I don't even think we have to really dive into the work, but we're all talking about the same things all the time, right? That's why we can go from Walt Whitman to Nicki Minaj's Monster, because they're bragging, right? Those are brag poems.
I would say, because the generations following ours, Gen Z and Alpha, whatever the new one is called, they're so visual. And I think one of the great ways to connect younger people with older people in general is to demonstrate to the younger people that the older people are not dead and that they are involved in some of the same activities. So Yusuf has just published, I think, the 3rd volume of a comic book called Jupiter Invincible. And so I would introduce them to him in that way and show some of his text in a visual form, and then work them back to the poems.
And it's the musicality as well, whether it's the music of a particular line or the poem itself or the topic that he's talking about. I think what Linda was saying in terms of thinking differently about the music, it's one of the few things that bonds us all, no matter where we live, no matter what our particular preferences or religions or whatever may be, it's always the music. And going to the line of it, going to the subject matter of it, I think is another way to build that bridge and get younger readers or readers first coming to his work to really appreciate him.
I found that Magic City is my favorite book, and I found highlighting the childhood experiences and that they're not so unique. We all have them. So I would use those poems where he speaks in that child's voice to enable the students to open up their childhood experiences. And I mean, it was like a discovery for them that their childhood experiences have value. They think, oh, nobody else ever had this experience. But then you highlight it in the poems where those things dovetail. And it's amazing what happens then with a 17-year-old, 18-year-old. It's like, oh, I never thought about that way. But I'd have to, sort of guide them to those places where they could connect with their experiences and his to bridge those gaps.
It's 9:33, but I think we started a little late. Do we keep going? Has anyone
No
been
one's,
to an 8:15?
yeah, no one's knocking down
No,
the door.
Okay, so we're
Yeah,
good?
yeah.
Okay.
I want to say one more thing because it popped into Magic City is definitely a great text, but another way to grasp young people is to provoke them, and particularly with hip hop, it would be a great exercise to like introduce Yusef's perspective on contemporary hip hop by sharing with them the No Good Blues, where he shares his very honest opinion about how he feels about the state of the music now, and have them write against that or speak against that because it's music that they're listening to and that they're involved in. That might be a fun exercise because I remember for at least my generation, when he wrote that poem, people were like, why is Yusef coming for our music? And then, they had a dialogue with him, and that was a beautiful thing to watch, and everybody came out unscathed in the end.
Another cheat code too is
Cheat
I
code.
oftentimes will ask students, what's your relationship with your mother? What's your relationship with your father? Their own, and then we can find a poem of Yusef's, where he talks about those things, and then once they read it, and then they have a reaction, and then you can, of course, ask them to imitate that poem, talking about their own experiences. And it's interesting too. When I first started writing poetry, I came to poetry as a